Hello everyone and welcome to Herstory. Today we're going to travel back to the Middle Ages, a time when queens, well, they were expected to be pretty quiet and produce heirs. But what happens when the queen decides she has ideas of her own? What happens when she not only has ideas, but also an army? Today I introduce you to Isabella of France, born in 1295. Forget the damsel in distress. This woman was not only the daughter of a powerful king, Philip IV of France the Fair, but also the daughter of Queen Joan of Navarre, a woman of notable character and power. Isabella was married to an English king who was, shall we say, particularly complicated. Her marriage to Edward II of England sounded like a fairy tale, but it ended up being an epic tragicomedy. Get ready to meet the she-wolf of France, a woman who went from being a pawn to the shrewdest player on the board. An interesting marriage. And by the way, a quick clarification to avoid confusion. Although her father was known as Philip the Fair, he is the King of France. Don't confuse him with the other Philip the Fair, who was King of Castile and the husband of Joanna the Mad. Ours is the French one. Let's continue. Isabella arrived in England in 1308, at just 12 years old, to marry Edward II. She was expected to bring peace between France and England and, of course, heirs. And yes, they did have children, 4 in total, including the future Edward III. But Isabella's married life was complex. Edward II wasn't very interested in conjugal duties or in ruling. His attention was, let's say, quite occupied with his male favorites, first Piers Gaveston, then Hugh Despenser the Younger. Imagine our young Isabella, a proud French princess, married to a king who ignored both his country and her, while showering his intimate friends with wealth and power. The situation was tense, to say the least. Isabella tried to be the loyal wife, the mediator between her husband and the English barons, who were furious about the king's favoritism. But patience has a limit, even for a queen. From ignored queen to she-wolf. Over time, the Despensers' influence over Edward became unbearable. The Despensers hoarded land, wealth, and power, publicly humiliating Isabella. It reached a point where they confiscated her own properties, jewels, and lands. Isabella's life became a torture. She was forbidden contact with the king, and her resources were reduced to a minimum. For Isabella, this wasn't just a personal insult. It was a threat to the stability of the realm and her children's inheritance. And this is where Isabella earned the nickname that would follow her through history. Her enemies, who already feared her character and lineage, began to call her the she-wolf of France. It wasn't a compliment, but a way of saying she was dangerous, wild, and capable of anything to protect her own. And they weren't wrong. The she-wolf unleashes the storm. When the opportunity arose to travel to France in 1325 to negotiate a peace treaty with her brother, King Charles III, she seized it. And she wouldn't return alone. Initially, her brother supported her, but pressure from Edward II made him back down. Instead of yielding, Isabella demonstrated her cunning. She found an exiled noble and enemy of the Despensers, Roger Mortimer. Together, and with the support of other nobles, they began planning the unthinkable, the invasion of England to overthrow Edward II. In 1326, Isabella and Mortimer landed in England with a small army. But their true weapon wasn't their army. It was her son, the future Edward III, whom she presented as the rightful heir. To her surprise, the people and nobles joined them with massive fervor. The hatred for the Despensers and the ineffectiveness of Edward II was so profound that support for Isabella was overwhelming. The Despensers were captured and brutally executed. We won't go into detail, but let's just say it wasn't a quick death. Edward II was captured and forced to abdicate in favor of his son, power in her hands. Thus, Isabella and Mortimer became the de facto regents of England. Isabella, the queen who had been ignored and humiliated, now held absolute power. She was the first woman in English history to overthrow her husband and govern the realm. Her most important work was, without a doubt, the political management post-overthrow, maintaining stability during her son's minority, albeit with great power in her own hands. However, power, as we know, can be intoxicating. Isabella's romance with Mortimer and their increasingly autocratic rule began to breed discontent. Her own son, Edward III, who was now a teenager, was not happy about having his mother and her lover ruling in his name. In 1330, the young Edward III staged a coup d'etat, capturing Mortimer and executing him. He spared Isabella, but sent her to a comfortable, though monitored, retirement. Although she lost power, her story didn't end there. She lived out the rest of her days until 1358, visited by her son, who honored her as a queen. She had proven that a woman could be much more than an ornament. She could be a political force, capable of changing the course of history. She went from being the submissive sheep to the she-wolf of France, a title she earned the hard way. And now, I want to hear from you. After hearing this story, what do you think was harder for Queen Isabella to handle? A husband who paid more attention to his friends than to the crown, or the in-laws who never liked her? Tell me in the comments and let me know which reign you think was the most complicated. If you love discovering the hidden and fabulous side of this woman, don't forget to give this video a like, and of course, subscribe to Herstory so we can keep unearthing the stories of the women who made the world turn in their own way.